Diana, would you call us
Roll
to order?
call. Commissioner Ashworth,
Here.
Commissioner Banks,
Here.
Commissioner Hassler, and Commissioner Schwerin.
Thank you all. Would you please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Happy holiday season, everyone. It's hard to believe that next Thursday is Thanksgiving. 6 weeks to the end of the year. That means 2023 is coming, so hopefully it is yes, big day, no doubt. It's coming so quickly. The old adage of hold on to your hat seems to take applicable significance with as windy as it's been for the last couple of days too. One last note before we jump in. Last night, many members of the command staff and others who were here were in the county council chambers for a wonderful recognition of our first female officers 50 years ago this year. And these were the first 5, and then there were another another subsequent 7, I think, in the second graduating class.
The original 6s that we hired years ago was here last night, and the others were former employees who had long since retired, yes.
Yeah, it was really remarkable. So if you stop and think about it, it was the first time anywhere in the country. So St. Louis County was the first police department to put females in a patrol car by themselves. Pretty impressive when you stop by that across the entire country. So kudos to those women for taking the challenge. With the county council proclamation, former Colonel and Chief Fitch was one who did the recognition. It was just a pretty special evening of some incredibly special women. So thank you to them. And by the way, they were delightful. They have the spunk that you know what got them through 50 years ago. It was just wonderful to see. So, anything else? Any other openings? No. Very good. Chief, you've got some things to do, some nice things to do.
Yes, sir, I do. One of the best parts of my job is doing what I'm ready to do now is give out some awards. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. Thank all of you all for being here today. And I want to start out with asking Police Officer Kevin Heldorfer to come forward for a Chief's commendation, and Captain Snyder.
Oh, thank you. I feel like a lounge act now, giving me a mic.
Lounge act.
10 years ago, Officer Heldorfer here came into my office and was asking me about starting a fishing tournament to raise money for Special Olympics. And I was like, Kev, that sounds great. And what little help the department gave at that time kind of grew through the years. And for the first 7 years, he raised about $25,000 for Special Olympics. And you started out with how many boats in this fishing tournament?
20-ish, maybe.
20-ish. I think there was probably, I think that's being generous even from back then. But it started out as a grassroots kind of a thing. He and his friends started this thing, which has now grown into, the official name is the
Cops and Bobbers is the name.
Cops and Bobbers. And I think it's going to probably have a board that you're going to have to set up now because over the last 3 years, he's raised over $100,000.
Wow.
And they've changed that beneficiary to the St. Louis County Welfare Association. So the men and women of the St. Louis County Police Department are the benefactors of him starting this tournament with his friends. And this year was $42,000 that they raised for the Welfare Association with, thought I remember that. Sorry, I'm getting old. The Heart 9/11 Foundation got $4,000. The JB2 Foundation got $4,000, and the Veterans Community Project got $4,000. So what he did in his spare time to raise money for the police department and for other charities, I thought was a great deal. And I think he's going to give the county welfare golf tournament a run for their money next year. And I'm very proud of him, and I knew you would be too, sir. And I just wanted to make sure everybody else knew about it. So, Kevin, you want to say a few words?
I like that name. Did you come up with that? I like that.
Great job.
Thank you.
Next up, Police Officer Nathan Phillips, come forward. And some citizens that we have today, Mr. Stephen Reeves. And Mr. Dewan Bateman. You can please come forward.
Mike.
Okay. Board of Police Commissioners, Chief, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to be here to present this award. Officer Phillips is not here. We will track him down later and present his award. Is that him? No? No? Okay. Just making sure. So in the summertime, I got to use these, sorry. There was if you all remember, July 26th, a massive amount of rainfall in the St. Louis metropolitan area. Some areas were affected more than others. In North County, there was several areas that were very high level of water that fell, and flash flooding occurred. You know, I stand up here a lot of times and I can, you know, as of 2 years ago, we weren't there, so we're taking the officer's word on what happened. Now we get to watch body-worn camera footage. I know the department put this particular video out along with several, or another, at least one other water rescue. And I would say, you know, as I'm watching these, I know the end result. I know everybody's going to be okay. But it's still a very tense viewing and to watch this in play. And then you start seeing, you know, heroic activity, bravery, officers, citizens. And that's why today is such a special day. And thank you all for being here. This is awesome. I'm glad we're filling up a row. Side note, I'm talking to Mr. Bateman and Mr. Reeves, and I was talking to Mr. Bateman trying to, you know, get him to invite them down here this day. Yes, I know. And I quickly realized that the woman that was in the car that was in distress, I mean, the water was ended up to the dashboard at one point. That was his mother-in-law. And he's like, hey man, I didn't have a choice. I was going in either way. And so we had a laugh on the phone. I'm like, yeah, you had to go because he was going to hear about it either way. So again, thank you for that. And I'm going to read the what's going to be on your guys' awards that you're getting today. On July 26, 2022, while St. Louis County was under a flash flood warning issued by the National Weather Service, you observed a St. Louis County police officer, Nathan Phillips, and another bystander attempting to rescue a motorist trapped in rapidly moving floodwater that had completely consumed Lucas and Hunt Road near Jacoby Avenue. The motorist was inside a vehicle that was partially submerged in the floodwater, and she was unable to exit the vehicle on her own. You waded through the quickly rising floodwater to assist Officer Phillips safely remove the motorist from the vehicle as the floodwater was beginning to cover the dashboard. You then teamed with Officer Phillips to escort the motorist to safety, and she was physically unharmed. While wading through the floodwater, you placed your life at risk due to a number of circumstances. A lightning storm was actively occurring. The floodwater was swift, making it difficult to navigate and maintain your balance. The water was extremely murky, making it impossible for you to be aware of any safety hazards you may have encountered. which include exposed sewer holes and the potential for downed power lines. You're watching this video and you don't, I mean, unless this is your backyard, it's just basically, it's a lake at this point. And these two gentlemen and Officer Phillips, they just go to this car because they see the lights. I think she had her hazard lights on, or the headlights were on. So, two ladies that you saved. Yeah, let's. Yeah, I mean, I can keep reading, but the fact is, and then when Officer Phillips got there, the officers have tools that can break out car windows. I think your mom's car had like maybe space shuttle glass because he hit this thing probably 25 times all around the perimeter, kind of the way we're trained to do. And it wasn't doing anything. And then who was first? So you showed up and then started throwing some elbows into that thing. And he threw some bows and he got that thing to where it actually was able to. And then your mother-in-law, she had to start kicking from the inside of the car. So this was an unbelievable thing to watch. They got her out and that was, I mean, just watching her walk to the to dry high ground was unbelievable. So thank you so much for helping out an officer in need. And the bravery and the courage that you guys showed that day, unbelievable. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Good, thank you. Yeah, that was impressive.
Thank you all very, very much. Wonderful support you have. Thank you. Before you move your report, we got one more thing. Got a shout out. Thank you all for coming. We're so proud of him with you. So proud of him.
This week is being, but we just keep moving, so.
Get some pictures on the hall.
As they should.
Yeah, the captain. He's a, no.
Isn't it remarkable what we can do together? Chief, I think we have one more shout out for the Family Association. Is that true?
Come on up, take the mic.
You got to fight it. You got to fight for it.
Yes, yes, sir.
Schneider may not give it to you, but you're going to have to fight him for
Good
it.
morning. Good morning, all. Chairman Ashworth wanted me to sing a couple of Christmas carols to get everybody in the Christmas.
All
mood.
right, let's do it.
So I thought I'd do a little Luther Vandross for you guys this morning. You guys do not want to hear me sing. I was talking to Commissioner Ashworth about the generous, kind gesture that the Welfare Association does each year for our officers that'll be working on the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas. They delivered checks to all 8 precincts as well as other work units working on the holidays to provide meals for our employees, because those of us in this room know it's very difficult to get a meal on Thanksgiving and Christmas while you're working, especially in the Division of Patrol. So it's a very kind gesture. We wanted to thank you guys, from the entire police department. I'm looking at Amy because she is a member of the Welfare Association. So thank you for what you guys do for our people that are going to be out there working on the holidays. We appreciate it.
Sir. No Christmas carol.
Yeah. Well, wait, you said you were going to sing. If you're not going to sing, you at least got to dance, right? All right. Amy, we're all going to look at you for a minute, so please don't do anything other than just acknowledge for all of you that we appreciate what the Welfare Association does. Thank you very, very much. Something small, but it's huge, so thank you. All right, Chief, back to you on your report.
First up on the agenda is the strategic plan update. All the board members should have gotten a copy of our public-facing strategic plans provided by Sergeant Sheldon. And I just wanted, and we probably heard this before, just to give you an update as to how we got to this point, as to where we are. First phase of this was the proposal, our research and analysis. They put the initiatives and goals together. They got this from some of the past strategic plans that we had, the SNAIL report, and work from some of the commissions that are working, like Jason Law's commission. The next phase was the goals, initiatives, and key activities were approved by the executive command staff. Draft was given to them. Group 3, the executive command staff formed working groups to address those initiatives that you see on that, in that program, in that strategic plan. We did surveys. We had surveys with the community, which is the first time we've ever done that with establishing strategic plans, got some kind of ideas as to what the citizens wanted to see from the police department. And we also did surveys from our officers. And with those 2 surveys, we got about 500 responses. Some of them we were able to put into strategic plans. Some we already had in our strategic plans, and some, will be considered later. Research analysis did an analysis of all the information that we got. All the responses were reflected in action plans. We did get some recommendations from, once we did the personnel surveys, we got some information back from them that wouldn't fit into our strategic plans, but there were some concerns that came about that the executive command staff will address to kind of give them some type of resolve based on their concerns. So that's in the process for us working on that. Last phase is pretty much what you got. I mean, with what you got there, those boxes where you see all the X's, those are working assignments that each division will have to fill. Depending on what that assignment is, that division will work on that particular assignment. And right now we're just going over the draft of their action plans as to how they're going to address those things within that plan. So that'll be the public safety, public facing program, strategic plan. Once we're done, that's what the public will see. They won't see the action activities that the commanders and their work groups put together. We got some adjustments to make on that. They're still working on that, but it will be completed. And Lieutenant, as far as I know, we're still on track to have this completed by the end of the year.
Thank you. Very comprehensive. It's quite impressive.
Yes.
The board's going to talk about it in our session today. Talk about perhaps some of the changes or additions, not changes, that we might want to add to it. So we will get back to you promptly to make sure that we don't stand in the way of the year-end focus, and we may need some additional clarification on some of them too, depending on where our conversations go. Well,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Next up, budget, Ms. Hill.
Good morning.
Morning.
It should be no surprise. It's about all the same as it has been all year. We're the third quarter report. We just finished that. You should be getting a copy of that. And we're having salary surplus as expected by the 80 vacancies we have. And that's covering the overtime. That is substantially, we're expecting a shortage of about 3.3 million, but the salary surplus is 6.3 million. So we've been, that's the way we've been trending all year. And so that's it's holding steady. We have a few other shortages and, surpluses in different line item accounts that will cover it. So as we approach the end of the year, we're expecting that we'll have a surplus of about 1.6 million in those things that we have control over, and then possibly a surplus of about 2.5 million in things like the medical insurance costs and the retirement amounts that we put in, that the actuary tells us how much to put in. But we don't touch that. We leave that alone. So potentially we would have a surplus at the end of about 4 million. But we don't know, that December 31st is the end of the year, but we hold the books open till about February. And so we won't know the final numbers until then. The other thing was I was going to mention the
May I
over.
ask a clarifying question.
Go ahead.
Is the 80 vacancies causing 6.3 million surplus and then the overtime causing 3.3 million
Yes.
over our budget? Is that year to date or is that projected to
That's
year-end?
projected. We
Projected.
look at how many vacancies we have right now and what we estimate they probably won't get filled. We base it on what our current staffing is and project out what the salaries we're incurring for the rest of the year and the overtime as well. So it, of course, can change depending upon things that happen, but we're pretty solid, 3/4 through the year. And one of the other large items are the vacation and sick payout. And those are driven mostly by traditional employees because you're allowed to pay get paid half your sick time. And I looked at the numbers and we're 80% PTO now and 20% traditional. So in future years, that will go down because there'll be less payouts. There's still payouts for PTO people, but just not as large a number. So that's really all I have for the current budget. And then I know you may have some questions about the 2023 budget, but I still don't have any answers because they're still having meetings with the different departments through next week. And after that, I would expect if they were going to make any changes to our budget, they would let us know then.
And have we met with them?
Yes, we did. On October 27th, we met in here with the Committee of the Whole. And Deputy Chief Ludwig gave a nice presentation about all the things we had in there. And they talked to him about any of their questions, but there was nothing that stood out that we needed to address.
And no direction provided, no expectations set for us as to what may or may not happen?
No, I think they wait till they meet with everybody and then as a whole, they'll decide. I know that they're concerned about a revenue shortage as they are every year. And what we submitted was a maintenance budget as they directed us. And so it's up to them if they would want to tell us we need to cut or something. And it covered all, current positions being filled.
And did they provide a timeline on when they would make decisions?
No, but it has to be approved by the council, this year. I don't know the exact date, sometime in December. So we should know pretty soon. Anything else? Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Hill.
Thanks, George. Appreciate it.
Good morning.
Morning.
So our monthly Teneo update. Since last month, we completed one item that's been in the works for a while, as you all know. That was the 10/12-hour shift study that Teneo wanted us to do. Went on for close to a year. And obviously, last month, the chief decided to move the entire Division of Patrol to 12-hour shifts, therefore effectively ending the long study that went on with Division of Patrol and Bureau of Research and Analysis. So that was checked as completed. A couple other items moving towards completion from the Bureau of Professional Standards. The Conduct and Discipline Manual, which is a lengthy manual, obviously, has moved through stakeholders and back to the county counselor's office. So there's big progress on that. I'd say it moved from probably 60 to about 80%. So hoping to have that completed, end of the winter, January, February for sure. And then that's pretty much it for Teneo for this month. I also wanted to let you guys know that Faith Kistler, who I don't know if you've all had the pleasure of meeting Faith, I'd assume, who does a great job with all of this for the department. Her and I had a discussion yesterday. She's going to do a year-end review of Teneo that I will present to you all in January.
Excellent.
That's a great segue into a couple of questions I wanted to ask. I feel like the department has made great progress on the suggestions presented by Teneo. And I wonder if we're at the point right now where we can move to quarterly or, less than monthly updates on this. I'd be interested in your feedback, how you feel about
I would love
that.
it.
Okay.
Yeah. And in all honesty, yes. I would almost say this. If there's because we're getting to now down to the nuts and bolts. We've discussed this, I know, a lot over the past months, where there's going to be several that we hope to accomplish, but are just kind of hanging out there. And I always use as the example, from the Division of Special Operations, that obviously the entire department would love to have a 4th SRU squad, which is a recommendation. But until those bodies are there, it's just going to lay in limbo. So if you were all good with it, why don't we do this? There might be something completed next month. So I'll continue to do it then. I'll do the yearly in January, and then we'll kind of go quarterly from there, unless there's an actual update that I want to give you
Makes
guys.
sense.
I think that sounds good. Understand that's not the board saying we don't think this is important anymore, just the value
Completely.
of
Yes. And last month, I came up here and we didn't really have any changes. A couple of things had moved the needle a little bit, but just as long as, I think you all understand, but the public understands that just because things may not be completed on a monthly timeline, that the department is still moving towards those things. Sometimes they just take longer than others.
So there were two things, just to echo Commissioner Schweren's comments, there were two things that set the stage for this, right? The progress and commitment the department's shown toward the Teneo to make us better, right? Not to throw stuff at us, but to make us better. And the board has talked about it and said that's great progress, which is what she led with. And what she concluded with is, please don't assume that by doing this that it's less important to us. It's still very much
Absolutely.
important. But
And that I know that. Absolutely. And it's, and again, from, I think we started with 96 of these, and we're down to 25 in progress, which is pretty good in the time that we've had
excellent
it.
idea. Thank you. Thomasini, you okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Quarterly it will be with the two caveats of any year-end numbers in January for the year-end report.
Sounds like a plan. And like I said, if there's things that develop conduct and discipline, if it's, we'll give you that update. If not, I wouldn't wait to the quarter, but that's obviously a huge task that would be accomplished.
That sounds good. In the year-end update, I'd be interested to know not just numbers of how much we're outstanding during the year and how much we accomplished, but maybe examples of what the department feels were the most impactful or meaningful adjustments or changes or implementations.
Add to that, and the ones that we think now that we've had them in place, or maybe not yet, which ones were at least impactful. I love the most, but if we putting things in place that aren't working, let's review those and see whether we need to keep them in place or not. Excellent ideas.
Sounds like a plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Faith is happier than I am.
Okay.
All right. We'll just move on to crime statistics. Wait for them to pull up here. All right. So we got the kind of dual screen there, so I don't know if it's harder to see on the screens. I think Sergeant Kraft's going to look at that, but regardless, on our monthly notable events tab that really encompasses everything in the Bureau of Professional Standards, our citizen complaints continue to be at 0%, which I believe that's 3 straight months on that. Internal investigations continue to be down, which is nice, but as you can see for the first time now, of these 5 categories that we have here. I know the 6th one is failure to yields, but of the 5 categories we have listed, it's the only one that is a percentage down. The uses of force have seen a little bit of an uptick. We had 28 last month as compared to 20 in October of 2021. And the vehicle pursuits continue to maintain, as we only had 1 last month as compared to 6 the previous month.
It's intriguing, just to interrupt for a moment, the vehicle pursuits, when you get a little bit later, when you show the failure to yield and how substantial that number is, those are just such contrasts.
I actually have a note written on that. So we will get to that here in just a second. You're reading my mind, but 271 on the failure to yields is the highest month that we've seen.
Incredible.
So as we look to that next slide on this heat map provided for the failure to yields, we continue to see, obviously, they continue to climb. And of the 271 that occurred last month in October, 70% exactly occurred between either the 1st, 8th, or 8th precincts or the highway safety unit, who obviously is completely driven by traffic type of stops. So they're obviously going to see higher numbers there. But to your point, Commissioner Ashworth, of the 271 cars that failed to yield, we initiated 1 pursuit, which shows the level of restraint and that our officers have when adhering with our policy, which is very conservative when it comes to the pursuit of vehicles.
Unfortunately, the bad guys know that too.
They do. For the patrol data, October, huge uptick in directed radio assignments for the Division of Patrol over the previous month of September. The 28,232 is 982 more radio calls than in the previous month. Self-initiated, as you could probably imagine, is going to go down when that goes up, and that was negative 462 from the previous month. In October, we had, if you include summons and lieu and DWIs, 748 total arrests. And then the crimes cleared went up in October, the 277 and the 428 significantly, obviously, from the previous month.
Could you go back for just
of course.
The question goes back to, I'm going to round up, right, by whatever it was, 18 to the 1,000. So 1,000 more in October than we had in September. Do we know why that was up? It's good weather both months, right? So I'm trying to rationalize why would have 1,000 different.
Yeah, I can't answer that because without breaking down, each like individual calls for service, and I'm not talking about all 28,000 of these. I'm talking about, looking at how many sick cases or how many assaults or things of that nature. I don't have that answer for you right now as to why it would be that big of a spike month to month. Because as you said, September and October, it's usually like that. However, I can say that when I looked at October of 2021, these numbers were nearly the same. So whereas you didn't have 1,000 call turnaround, you had about a plus 600 from the previous year.
Yeah, that's just it's a little over 30 a day.
Right.
Across the department. That's just massive.
Yep. So when we look at the crimes against persons statistics, the homicides, and again, I know that just to throw the caveat out there for anybody who may not know, these numbers are January 1st, 2022 through October 31st of 22. That number actually on homicides sits at 61 to 50 now, because unfortunately we've had 2 homicides I believe they were both over the past week or 2. Our aggravated assaults with a firearm moved by 9%. So they're moving in the wrong direction. Clearly we've seen more of those type of assaults going up. And the overall is now at negative 8.4, which on the surface is a good thing. But in September, that was at minus 11.6. So again, we're starting to move back to that mean there. Homicides by the numbers, October just saw 1 as compared to 3 from 2021. And then again, the total number of homicides on the slide that I have here is 61 to 48. Just because, again, this was through October 31st, which is what we pull our numbers for. But Lieutenant Longworth gave me the update this morning, which is now 61 to 50.
Before you leave.
Yep.
Same question I ask often, and the donut in the bottom right-hand side, the other category, it's the largest category, second largest category we have. Maybe long,
So I have it in front of me, unless you'd like to chime in, but the other 4 of the homicides were from manufacturing of explosives. 1 assault on law enforcement, 1 attempted robbery, 1 vehicle pursuit, 1 child abuse, 1 manslaughter, 1 felony assault, and 1 mental health episode. So those
Thank
are
you.
the other.
thank you for the detail around it.
Yes, sir. Crimes against property. If I look at from my presentation in September, which I did, all of these percentages on the right barely changed, with the exception of, take a guess, motor vehicle thefts, which was plus 54.7% overall as a department in September. It is now up to almost 70, plus 70% from the previous year. In 2021, October of 2021, we had 130 stolen vehicles. In October of 2022, we had 386 stolen vehicles, which obviously shows that solely because of motor vehicle thefts, we are now in the positive on the plus 3.5 overall on crimes against property.
It looked like, just quick numbers, so please don't take this any type of math whiz. If we were to remove the motor vehicle thefts, we'd be down 11 or 12%.
That's correct. Yep.
Not that that's okay, it's still
Yeah.
motor vehicle, but
And I should have put that up there. And actually, if we took all crimes against persons and property combined, we would actually be just over into the higher figures from last year, solely because of motor vehicle thefts.
And setting aside the Hyundai and Kia, we expect motor vehicle thefts to increase for the rest of the year because of the cold weather, right?
Well, we would hope, you know,
I mean, we would
not,
hope
but
not.
yes, obviously, we always see a spike in the winter months because of those. But I know that all of the precinct captains do a great job at directing those patrols and trying to get into those areas. But again, people are warming up their cars. You know, when I left my house this morning at 5 a.m., there was 3 cars as I drove out to Tesson Ferry Road in the 3rd precinct that were started in the driveway with nobody around. So these things are going to happen. And unfortunately, that's one street and one subdivision in one part of the county. And, you know, that's happening everywhere. So, yeah, hopefully we don't see that increase. I don't know that it can go much higher than it's been, but
careful.
yep, exactly. Hyundais and Kias, the 1252 overall represents 57% of the total steals.
You know, we ask it every month, but
Mhm.
we'll ask it again. I had heard, I won't speak for everyone, I had heard that they were working on a solution.
You talking about the companies?
Manufacturer, yeah,
That I had not heard.
okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Schwerin, you had asked for some maps regarding stolen vehicles from last month. So the fine folks in research and analysis were able to create 4 of them total, but these first 2 show motor vehicle thefts. It's got, as you can see, the Kias, Hyundais, and then others, so all of them, and the areas that those vehicles were stolen. And then on the right, obviously, is just a heat map reflecting the same. If we move to the next one, this is just specifically Kias and Hyundais, and the heat map reflecting the same. So the North and South County areas on, if I go back on both maps, you can see a little bit around Creve Coeur, the 2nd precinct as well on that left map, right there in the middle, gets hit pretty hard as well. Crimes against society. Again, the one thing I like to point out is the DWIs just continue to rise, which is a great thing for our department. And most of that spearheaded by the men and women of Highway Safety Unit. But DWI is up 33.7%. 64 of those occurred in October.
So just to clarify, it's not a good thing that there are people out there.
No,
All right.
but I think we all know that that's unfortunately always happening. We've just,
Catching more.
yes, we're catching more for sure. Thank you for the clarification.
Is there a way to measure the deterrent effect that might have?
Can look into it.
I was just posing, I guess, perhaps a it's called. I don't know if the question has an answer.
Are we talking about the end effect of like motor vehicle accident type of things, or?
No, I wonder if the more we are pulling over and citing, the more likely somebody's going to call an Uber or a taxi as opposed to get behind a wheel.
Something we could try to look into, I think. But yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. For the directed calls for service, total of 12,171 here, moving averages. Obviously, we've already talked about how October was over that. So clearly every precinct was up, at least in a little bit from September. And then same thing for self-initiated calls. Every precinct was down with the exception of South County, Fenton, and West County. I'm sorry, West County was way down as well. Do you all still want this slide in there?
It seems pretty consistent.
It's extremely consistent.
I
Sick cases, burglar alarms, and auto accidents. It's up to you. I can keep it in there.
How
And if
much
you
work
have-
does it take to get? I think it's worth
Nothing.
for us to keep it. Okay, then let's just keep it in for right
You've
now.
got
It doesn't change much.
Yeah.
The sick cases are,
I always feel like I have to say something here, but
I think if you just leave it up for us if we have questions.
Sounds good.
It's probably worthwhile to keep since they are our top calls. and
You got it.
Utilization of our employees.
absolutely. And then finally, our TSRs. I know we had talked a little bit about this last month, but so TSR committee met, I believe it was about 2.5 weeks ago. Looked at, when we have those meetings, we look at each one of the police officers on the department and their actual stop number. This is obviously just the precinct numbers, and see if there's any outliers. If there are, then we discuss those, see if there's some sort of explanation for it. And if not, then we continue to monitor it and ultimately have to make a decision from there on what we do. That said, and you might ask what kind of outliers there would be. For instance, there was somebody that was flagged through our system that had a higher percentage of minority stops, and it said that he was assigned to the 4th precinct. Well, just a little bit of homework, realized that he did 3 to 4 weeks on his alternate field training in the North County precinct, which obviously would have a higher number of minority residents. So when you look at his stops compared, it wasn't even close to the 84.4 is my point to that. But so we continue to look at these things, but no outliers again, as far as the precincts on reporting for the month.
We're grateful that you get to that degree of detail. It's wonderful.
Who makes up the committee? You probably told us before. I don't remember.
Yeah, myself, Lieutenant Colonel Cox, and Captain Guy Means.
Gotcha.
And that's the end.
One last set of questions, perhaps, and I'm not sure whether we should direct them to you, Lieutenant, to you, Chief, with Deputy Chief Ledwig not here. So when we take a strategic plan and we have your group that's providing us with reporting, maybe following Commissioner Schwerin's lead, are there measures that will go along with our progress toward this? Now, we certainly don't expect to see stuff the first 6 months or so, right? Because this is a long-term strategic plan, but have you had a conversation on how we're going to measure our progress toward achieving this within the 5 years?
Well, we haven't discussed that yet, but when we put those plans together, we have a plan of action activities that we can measure. Once we decide what they would act, we'll determine how we're going to.
Excellent. We look forward to hearing about that. Any other questions for Lieutenant? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Just to follow up a little bit on auto theft. Auto theft is killing just about all of the police departments locally. I know St. Louis City had about 3,000 auto thefts just last month or whatever. Obviously, you see what they do to our numbers. I know for talking with Captain Cunningham and Captain Cunningham and Captain Cavaletti, they're giving out the door lock, car locks up in North County Precinct and through community engagements to those that own the vehicles that are being stolen. So I know that's happening with us. Do we have enough? Probably not. There are a number of chiefs I met with in Jefferson City on Monday, and our goal up there was to try to get some funds from the state to help us support the overtime people that we're using as a task force in reference to trying to nail down the stolen vehicles throughout the county. I was up there with chiefs and some of the mayors from the Muni League. There are mayors of each city trying to get some funds for that. And nothing happened. Nothing happened. That does not mean that we're going to stop our special enforcements and trying to help us with cutting down on the car thefts. What happens with car thefts is us out there doing that, we're going to run into other offenses also that we're going to have to work with. So they're out there doing it. We still have task force with other municipalities and car thefts. None of us left there saying that we weren't going to continue doing what we're doing and trying to curb the car theft. So, but as far as getting any kind of financial support to pay overtime, we didn't get any. So.
Thanks for the update. And maybe to reiterate one thing in there that I personally heard and everyone else may have heard something different, which is as a community, the St. Louis community continues to work together, at least many of us, along with the St. Louis County Police Department, to have a task force. We're looking at this across the majority of the community.
Right.
Thank you.
Like I said, the mayors, as a matter of fact, the president of the Muni League, he called that meeting for us to discuss this. So obviously the mayors and their citizens are awfully concerned about what's going on. Because what happens with auto theft, and we've seen it here lately, is that the citizens who's had their vehicles stolen from them are taking action themselves that could possibly get somebody killed. That happened in Richmond Heights a couple of weeks ago. He tracked his stolen car with all the apps and everything that you got. He tracked his stolen car and he ran it down up here on 40 and Big Bend, and shots were fired, with him. So that's a concern of ours. It's a concern of ours. So anyway, we are working with that. Mr. Becker, you're up, sir.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Morning.
So with regard to the staffing report, we remain at 971 authorized. We have 889 officers. That's a vacancy of 82 positions. That's improved over the last 2 months, very incrementally. It was 85 back in September, 84 back in October. That number is going to go to 83 vacancies on November 22nd. And that's due to a retirement. And I want to let you know of the extraordinary efforts we make to retain people. So Chief Gregory approved the retirement packet of Colonel Sack, who has served the department for 34 years. Someone took that memorandum, changed the chief's approval to a denial of the retirement.
That would be us.
And being the detective that he is, after he received it, Colonel Sack realized that it was a forgery of the chief's signature, but just wanted to recognize Colonel Sack's 34 years of service. She was not happy.
Thank you, sir.
So as you know, Class 205 graduated October 13th. We have 5 officers from that class in field training right now. Class 206 began June 27th. They'll be graduating December 15th. We'll be graduating 7 county officers. There's also 10 municipal officers in that class. And of course, you'll get information as the time gets closer as to the time and details of the graduation. Class 207 is scheduled to start January 2nd. We have 10 confirmed offers. We do have 12 in backgrounds and PT for that class. I think realistically, we should be able to obtain 15 recruits for that class. With professional staff, it's a one-person improvement on the vacancies. I'll take it. It's incremental. We have 38 vacancies with 339 actual professional staff employees. The PSD Academy class number 16 started October 31st with 3 dispatchers. The next PSD class will be January 30th of 2023, and we're processing applications for that.
Sorry. Director, what's the delinquency or what's the amount of people we're short in the communication center?
Yeah, I was just getting to that. So the significant vacancies with dispatch is 7 right now. We do have an experienced dispatcher that is coming back to us, will not need to go to the PSD class. That'll certainly help out. And we have 13 vacancies in security. So those are the significant vacancies in professional staff. We almost always have openings for report clerks and record clerks. We only have 1 opening for a record clerk. So that's good. And 5 report clerk vacancies. We had a cadet vacancy, but we just onboarded a new cadet on Monday. So the cadet positions are all filled.
Before you move on then, so you've talked a little bit about some improvement in, well, forgive me, when you're done with recruiting in the different groups and the vacancies, let me know because I've got a couple of 3 questions that'll all be similar.
I think I'm done.
Very good. So 15 in January, that's a significant step up where perception would be we've been running 5 to 7, so we're about to get double of that. I think we'd like to hear, perhaps hear from Captain back there about what we're doing differently. I think there's some novel things that we may be doing, so perhaps next month or in January we can hear from him. We've talked about the dispatches a little bit. What are we doing to support Captain Morgan and security with people?
We will do that. We're things are in process now, and I think that'll improve. So
you're going to have to give us a little bit more color, right? 13 people that were grouped the size that the captain leads is a pretty substantial chunk. So what are we going to be doing, or what are we thinking about doing to support security?
So initially, Captain Morgan and Colonel Lohr have really pushed this forward. One thing we've done is for the time being anyway, in the chief's approval, of eliminate the height weight requirement and the PT testing. The reason we've done that is our pay is comparable or a little bit less to private security. Private security does not have the same rigorous background process that we do. They did not have the PT testing. So somebody who is interested in being a security officer is going to go to the private world, perhaps make a little bit more, and also not have to go through the rigorous testing. So we've eliminated, at least for now, to see the results that we get, the PT testing and the height weight requirement. And that has enhanced the applications. With respect to the pay, we have the CBA. That's, right now it's something that's a challenge that, of course, the chief and the rest of the department want to improve people's pay, but we're not there yet.
Did we have a number being disqualified because of the height weight requirement? Was that an issue?
It certainly the PT testing was a big issue. I don't have that number, but it's significant. Generally speaking, to answer your question, and this is true with commission, if you have 9 people in PT testing, 3 will show up and 1 of them will pass. Those are just the general odds. It's self-initiated for an applicant to sign up for PT testing. Once they've submitted their application, they do it all online. So if on any given day we have 9, for example, 3 will show up, 6 will be no call, no show, and 1 will pass the PT test. So that's kind of our batting average. But we'll have more for you next month also. It'll be more comprehensive then.
Thank you.
We have 1 out on COVID. So that's really hasn't been an issue. And getting back to Faith Kistler, her and Officer Rich Venzel have been great about being the COVID coordinators since the beginning of all this. Faith puts together a monthly COVID sheet and keeps track of it and so forth. And I think the job they've done, the job the department has done reacting to COVID over the past 2.5 years has been extraordinary, and really the best department in the whole county for tracking it, taking care of our people, making sure they follow proper protocols in quarantine. And I would think that's one reason why the number out right now is very low. We have only 6 out on military separation. I bring that up every month just to remind the public that we do support our veterans, and We support our reservists, so if they continue in the service of our country, they will be accommodated so they can either do their year deployment or their 2-week camps and weekend camps and so forth.
So if you're talking to the public, starting January, we have a different parental leave going in place, correct?
We do. And so the status of that is the Civil Service Commission, which we wanted to follow their plan, have not made their final decisions yet as to how it's going to be implemented. But the gist of it will be that the 12 weeks is indeed continuous, so that if somebody is on leave right now and returns back to work prior to January 1, they will not get those 12 weeks. It has to be continuous. If somebody leaves on December 1, uses up 4 weeks, they'll have 8 weeks remaining then, and that's the gist of it. Of course, there's 80 hours of caregiver leave, if you will, for the first year of the child, doctor appointments, that sort of thing. And there's 160 hours, 4 weeks for the secondary caregiver. That does not need to be continuous.
A nice additional benefit for people who might want our profession yet have life plans also.
It's extraordinary, I think, in a great segue to the recognition last night of women in police work. You know, this department is cutting edge with respect to that, 50 years ago. And I think now the county is cutting edge and giving those kind of benefits that really focus on mothers, frankly, to do that, and then in support of fathers also. So applications for October, we had 40 police applications. We have 12 in backgrounds right now. That includes some laterals. I'll get to that shortly. And so the total hires for the year, 87 total. It's 26 commissions, 61 non-commission. We do have a conditional offer pending to an experienced officer who is actually a former county officer and returns to us recently, and he has a conditional offer pending. If you look at the second page in your packet from HR, there's a lateral pay summary, a snapshot, if you will. The effective date of the CBA was September 9th. And since the effective date, we've had 5 experienced hires. Right now, we have 5 in testing and backgrounds. We have 5 scheduled for final review boards in the next couple weeks. And we have 1 conditional offer pending. That's the officer I referred to just a bit ago. And on number 3, so it's a snapshot of a year before the effective date of the contract. We had 105 resignations, 32 retirements, and 2 deaths. So the turnover from September 9th to the present are 25 resignations, 7 retirements. I need to add 8 to that. And 1 officer passed away. So if you look at those numbers, taking into account that since 9/9/22 is roughly a quarter, not quite, it's maybe a half or 2/3 of a quarter, the numbers kind of mimic what the 12 months prior were. And I'll have more detailed information in January with respect to we'll have the fourth quarter quarterly reports on NBQs and exit interviews. And then we'll have also a summary that focuses more and expands on this document as to the success of the lateral pay, because we'll have a little bit more than a full quarter of the lateral pay CBA going into effect. And we'll have those numbers and then also the recruiting plan and what we're going to be doing about it in response to those numbers.
So a little different interpretation. When I read 9/9/22 to present, I read that as 2 months, not a quarter. So when I run my mental calculations, that says our resignations are going to be up 50% year over year. They're going to be 150% of what we had from September of 21 to September of 22.
If they keep the same pace, I would say that it's roughly about 2/3 of a quarter, just to kind of give a bearing as to a rough
The
calculation.
net of it is it's up substantially. And when you look at the retirements, you do the same calculation, it's going to be up too. So the net of that isn't so much to pick at the numbers, it's the direction is we're going to have more turnover, at least if it continues the way it has over the last several years. and it started out this year, at least this fiscal year as you're calculating.
And that's possible if this were science, and I know you're not saying that, but yeah, I think that's quite possible.
And I would say quite probable. The point of that is trying to send the message that everything we do, we've got to amp up on the recruiting and as much on the retention. So I'll go back a little bit in reading the numbers. So what it says is, at least in the first 3 months of us implementing lateral pay, we're going to have at most 16 experienced officers who have come over.
That's fair.
And so we're balancing with my peers. We approved it based on attraction and retention. And it doesn't seem that it's perhaps doing what we intended it to do. We'll never know whether it was going to be more and people opted to stay, right? But on the raw numbers, I think I would express my opinion that it's not what we expected from an applicant standpoint, and certainly didn't anticipate that turnover would, whether it's 35 or 50%, would go up significantly year over year with the increased pay. So just one member's opinion.
And I would add that so 117 existing officers and some sergeants received the retention pay, lateral pay boost, however we want to characterize it. And as far as I know, and I will follow up on that and report back, I don't think any of those 117 have left. So
That would be a great
with-
moment.
that's a good retention rate. So to keep some optimism, Mr. Chairman, last month you mentioned or asked about, what's the effectiveness, what's the recruiting effect of going to 12-hour shifts. Certainly talked about it, thought about it. I don't know if it has any effect, probably a zero effect, because most departments in the area are already on 12-hour shifts. So I don't think that's necessarily, if somebody wants 12-hour shifts, I think it's a good marketing spin to attract people, but I don't think it's unique from the rest of the region. Likewise, with respect to the pay, we're competing with other departments, and when we get together at SLAPCA meetings and various events that we see chiefs of police, that's all we talk about. It's what we talked about yesterday at the Board of Managers meeting at the Academy. Retention, staffing, it's on everybody's mind. Every police chief in the region is pushing their government for pay increases, for better hours, better benefits, that sort of thing. And so we're facing the same kind of competition. Obviously, the benefits of St. Louis County, I think we're the most professional department in the area and the region, if not the country. We have a lot of opportunities with special assignments and so forth. So that's the attraction that our department has in that regard.
Could you come back next month? I'm intrigued by your comment, thoughtful of turnover of those getting lateral pay.
Yes, sir.
And then in the, I'm trying to think of the impact on patrol. So I'm looking at Colonel Cox on the impact of 12-hour shifts. Is 3 months is enough time to grab at least a snapshot of what turnover looks like based on movement to 12-hour shifts?
I know, at least with respect to surveys and satisfaction, and Colonel Cox, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but initially there's resistance. I mean, some people are embracing it. Initially there's resistance. Officers generally come to like the 12s more than they thought they would. Some still won't like it. It depending on the precinct you're in, it could be a grind, but then you get half the year off also. And I would point out, I know we're starting on December 25th, but more officers will be off on Christmas than had we been on 10s. So I think it's benefiting. Kind of bad timing, but it's the way the payroll worked out and so forth. It wasn't intentional. It was just the most accurate start date. So more officers will be off on Christmas Day. I think they'll come to find that they enjoy having, roughly 181 days off a year.
So is 3 months enough time to grab an initial snapshot? You do turnover every month, so that's not as important.
Sure.
Trying to connect it back to any type of causation with the 12-hour shifts on retention and or turnover.
Yeah, let me address that with, and Colonel Cox is deep in the weeds on that, and I'll address that with him, and we'll report back then next month as to what a good increment is to give you that
That'd be
gauge.
great. And then we'll obviously want to measure that, whether it's 3 months or maybe it's a trimester. I'm loath to go too far beyond that.
Yes, sir.
I had a quick question, Carl.
Yes, sir.
On the conditional offer. Can you tell, I know the public might be like me and not know what that means. What conditional offer?
So, yes, sir. A conditional offer is the applicant has gone through our extensive background process, polygraph examination, appeared before the final review board, which consists of the 5 division heads, including myself. And they have that applicant has received a recommendation. The recommendation goes to the chief of police, and the chief either approves or denies. Obviously, in this case, the chief approved. The applicant is given a conditional offer, and they have a medical exam and a psychological exam. Once those are satisfactorily completed, they get a full offer.
Got it.
Thank you. Good question. Anything else?
Yes, sir. So with respect to the mentorship program, just a quick update. It is implemented. It's ongoing now. We have 35 trained, like I stated last month. We have 25 waiting in the wings that will be trained shortly. The idea is we want them trained and then get a mentee as soon as possible so they don't get rusty, if you will. And with respect to the academy, our new recruits in January, there are hopefully 15, 10 now, will receive mentors. Some of them have already started as aides in the precinct, so they already have their mentors. And then it was very satisfying at the Board of Managers meeting. Dr. Hassler, of course, was there, that the municipalities are embracing this concept. They will be supporting the program by supplying their own mentors to their people who attend. They will also be supporting us with respect to open enrollment. So if somebody is attending through Maryville, Lindenwood, or just a straight open enrollment, in other words, they're not sponsored by any or employed by any particular police department. They are just there with a background investigation, attending on their own the academy. Those folks all need mentors also, and the municipalities are willing to step up so that St. Louis County doesn't take all the burden. So it's a great partnership at the academy with the municipalities, and we appreciate their support.
Apologize for the detail of the question, but you talked about we want the mentors to be fresh and off their training. So how many of them are currently engaged in a mentoring relationship? Of the 35 that were?
Of the 35, I think 22. And we've talked about the idea, it's a 6-month mentorship, and hopefully informally it continues past that time. If push comes to shove, we think that some mentors could handle having 2 mentees, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Hopefully we won't have to.
Problem to have.
Yep. But
And are our lateral hires receiving mentors?
yes, they are. And I also emphasize, I think we talked about this previously, to be clear though, this is a volunteer program, but it's an application that requires references and interviews by the mentorship board. And so it's not a slam dunk that somebody who wants to do it will automatically be granted being a mentor, and then they need to be trained. And it's an 8-hour training program. So with respect to ABLE training, just a quick update. All officers will be trained by December 5th. Obviously, we're hiring new officers and recruits. The recruits will receive the ABLE training in the academy. And then the new officers that are, as they're hired, they will be trained also. The professional staff ABLE training is still on hold. We're kind of beholden to Georgetown University, and we're waiting for them to approve the program. And also with respect to expansion to other municipalities, we are collaborating with other municipalities, police departments to expand ABLE program. They're running with it. We're encouraging and supporting it. So as with many things like peer support, we're the leader in the region on ABLE.
Good progress.
And that's all I have.
Question for Mr. Becker. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
12-hour shifts, we did the two precincts, the 3rd and, I'm sorry, the 7th and the 1st, to just give an example of how this is going to work. And eventually we're going to 12 hours for everybody. And we did personnel surveys throughout that process as to how they liked it. Some, as Carl said, some liked it, some didn't. And we'll continue to do those surveys once we go to 12-hour shifts. That may lead us at some point to move officers around who are kind of burnt out on it. We give them that opportunity. I know Colonel Cox has mentioned this to me before. We used to have a spring draft. You just kind of move people at a certain period of time, just give them a new view of our department. So that's the thought. If it gets to the point where, we're getting officers are just burnt out on it, give them some relief somewhere else on a different shift, because they're all going to be 12, just on a different shift. So, yeah, more officers off on Christmas Day. I'm sure there's going to be a plus for a lot of officers, but those that are working on Christmas Day, double pay. So I don't know which will be, they want more, but they'll get that. It's early in the lateral pay, and I just hope that you guys want to work with us and give us some time to see how that's working. What happened with lateral pay, once they found out that we were going to do it, we found out that there were other agencies that were giving lateral pay. And once we did it, other municipalities, departments picked up lateral pay also. So, they're grabbing people just like we're trying to grab people. But we just want to make sure that we give it some opportunity to work for us.
So that's a great comment across all of those, but it impacted the entire policing community. So if our officers across the entire St. Louis community are all making a little bit more money, we are all in favor of that.
Right. Appreciate it.
Chief, on the movement from 10 to 12-hour shifts, that's going to be a significant, you think 2 hours is not a big deal, but that's a pretty significant lifestyle change. Have we thought about whether there are going to be resources needed to support our officers as they transition from, one set of 10-hour shifts to 12? It's probably going to be more than just the first 2 weeks of working.
Lieutenant Scott Rhodes, I think he's sitting back there now. Yes, with our wellness program, he has given out a couple of times different things to do to help you to adjust to working 12-hour shifts compared to what you've been doing, how to, to sleep, how to eat, things of that sort. And, we just hope that these officers pay some attention to what he's put out there, because it is a great life change for them. So we have done that through our wellness program, giving them some recommendations as to how to adjust.
Lieutenant, you're probably ahead of me on this, but I would just suggest let's make sure we're on top of it on a going forward basis for a while.
Absolutely, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Maybe one interruption, and I apologize. My personal questions around turnover and engagement wasn't to suggest that it's going to be perceived poorly. It's just, it's a variable that's changed. Let's make sure we're measuring out what impact that variable was on our workforce, both positive and perhaps those who don't see it as positive.
We're all just going to be on the same page. I appreciate your concerns about that. Yes. So, any of you biologists or a science background or whatever, well, you're probably going to need it for this next presentation. Okay. We have Lisa Campbell, who runs our lab upstairs for us. Lisa has been up there for a number of years, and she does a great job up there. We have more accreditations for our lab through the nation than anybody could possibly have. And she does a great job of running that. I know there are times Lisa will put out a request to me for a $225,000 telescope. What kind of telescope is that, But once she explains to me why she needs that $225,000 telescope, it makes great sense. So Lisa, come on down. She's here to give you the presentation about our lab. Lisa?
Campbell, thank you for joining us. We are so grateful to learn a little bit more about your organization and all that they do. I will share, as friends of mine and colleagues of mine who have known I've come on the police commission, they'll ask, well, what do you do and all that? And when I say something about our lab, they say, oh, you have a CSI? So just know that well, for whatever reason, whether it's because of the $250,000 microscopes or whatever, just a lot of people intrigued by the work that your department do. So thank you.
Excellent. You guys please keep it simple for us.
Very well said.
I sure will give brief descriptions of all the different disciplines that we have, and you guys can ask additional questions if you have them. But To start out, my name's Lisa Campbell. I am the lab director and quality assurance manager. I've worked for the lab and the department for 23 years. Prior to my role now, I worked in the discipline of biology DNA. We service 88 municipalities, 51 police departments. We also service federal agencies for the Eastern District of Missouri. We are accredited to ISO 17025, which is a global quality standard for any type of testing or calibration laboratory. We receive some type of assessment each year with the full reaccreditation assessment every 4 years. Our next full accreditation assessment is March of 2023. We've been accredited since 2005. We also follow the quality assurance standards for forensic DNA testing laboratories as required by the FBI. We are assessed every other year to these standards. We follow industry best practices as established by NIST and the Organization of Scientific Area Committees for Forensic Science. We actually have 2 current laboratory staff members that were recommended and then elected to be on these committees, one in the discipline of DNA and one in the discipline of explosives. We have 56 total laboratory staff members. That includes our testing staff and our support staff, 6 of which are in some stage of a training program right now. A typical training program is about 1 to 3 years for a forensic scientist and about 6 to 8 months for those serving in the role as a technician. The laboratory receives on average 12 to 14,000 requests for testing each year. I have additional stats that I'll provide you at the closing. I'll go over the various sections of the laboratory. We have a biology DNA section. They essentially test proteins and enzymes commonly found in body fluids and also identify trace evidence. They also perform DNA STR analysis to make inclusions and exclusions as to contributors to evidentiary items.
Oh, can we interrupt for a minute?
Yes.
In that concept of keeping it simple, what's an STR?
Short tandem repeat.
Sure.
It's areas on
That's what that's my guess.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't get it.
it's areas on the DNA molecule that repeat
Thank
themselves. So technology in this unit evolves rapidly. We're always validating new techniques and asking for money to get these new techniques. The most recent addition to our workflow is called STR Mix. It's a software program that aids in the deconvolution of complex mixtures. We are estimating a 22 to 25% increase in the number of interpretable profiles with this software program. We utilize the DNA index system and are able to generate investigative leads. We've identified 432 leads from year to date. We have a drug chemistry section. They test evidentiary items for the presence of controlled substances. The chemists rely on state and federal statutes in determining whether or not the substance they identified is actually controlled. Right now, we're trending high in fentanyl. This is the most tested controlled substance at this time. We have an arson and explosives unit. They support the St. Louis Regional Bomb and Arson Unit. They have various testing techniques to identify explosive precursors, and ignitable liquids from fire scenes. They also provide technical assistance and training in homemade explosives region-wide. We just are recently purchasing a new scanning electron microscope with asset funding. This is to replace aged equipment that's critical to the continued operation of the unit. The Firearms and Tool Marks unit performs microscopic comparisons for tool marks with the primary focus of determining if a bullet cartridge case or ammunition component was fired by a particular firearm. We're currently researching 3D microscopy techniques as advanced technology for this discipline. They utilize the National Integrated Ballistics Information Network database, where they can link ballistic evidence from scene to scene or from scene to a firearm. We've identified 616 investigative leads year to date. The latent section of the laboratory analyzes latent prints. They also process evidence for the development and retention of fingerprints to be used for possible identification. The newest validated instrument we have in this unit is called an FSIS. It's essentially a state-of-the-art imaging system that has increased the recovery of our latent prints. They utilize the automated fingerprint identification system and the next generation identification system to generate investigative leads. We've identified 1,826 leads. The 10-print unit of the crime laboratory is a 24/7 operation. They evaluate 10 print impressions taken by St. Louis County Justice Services. This is a crucial step to ensure individuals entered into the criminal justice system are properly identified and are linked to appropriate criminal charges. We also have a digital evidence section of the laboratory. They evaluate evidence from cell phones, computers, surveillance systems, any type of digital storage device that'll have digital media. These units were primarily established to identify child sexual abuse materials, but in addition to that, they now work any type of crime. Challenges remain in this as to accessing locked devices and just keeping up with the technological advances that happen. All of the testing disciplines will testify as expert witnesses upon request. In addition to our testing disciplines, we have support staff in the function of evidence reception, a laboratory information management administrator, and a photography unit who does various photography assignments. Current challenges with the lab is obviously case management. Everybody wants everything done yesterday, and so do we. This puts a lot of pressure on the staff. Internal staff training programs, I mentioned the length of those. Any gain and loss and gain of personnel is negatively impacts our goal of reducing the backlog and getting things done timely. We were recently afforded the opportunity to send 2 of our latent examiners to an expedited training facility that's external to the laboratory. It's proven to be very effective, and that's something that we hope to be able to continue to use in the future. Technology obsolescence budget would be wonderful to have, but I'm sure every county department would like to have this. We do have really adequate resources, but we know when things tend to get to end of life, and we have to keep them limping along until we can beg for some additional funding. So we do have a great budget for internal staff continuing education, and I think that's been imperative to us continuing to improve the laboratory. Despite backlog and turnaround times, the laboratory has for the last 2 years received the Foresight Maximus Award, and that is for operating at 90% or better peak efficiency. So that's all I got. Do you guys have questions for me?
Congratulations.
I have a couple. So you said external
Handout.
It's a dictionary of all those terms.
Yeah, okay, we should have gotten this first.
So you said external training is helpful. Do we have a budget for that? And do you need, if you have a budget, is it adequate?
External trainings like this until recently. So we did get the opportunity to do it. It just kind of worked out when we hired someone. There was a class starting and, they did find funding for us. But no, we don't currently have it in our budget, but hopefully that's something we can do in the future. Anybody else?
I have 1,000 questions, but they're probably not for right now, right? I know you provided the opportunity to do a ride along and within your group,
Yeah.
and I may do that again. I'll just share a story as you're leaving. My wife and I were with 2 of our grandkids, and so Paul, what do you do? So I pulled out the organizational chart and kind of said, well, we've got groups that do all of this. And at the end, they said, well, geez, Paul, it sounds like you have an Avengers organization. Everybody has special skills. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. So my question to you would be, which Avenger are you? You mean the group?
Wonder Woman, she's Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman?
She's Wonder
Well,
Woman.
I was
Okay, I'll take that one.
Superman.
Take Wonder Woman, take Wonder Woman.
I'll take one.
It was great though, but Chief, I say that, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Campbell. I say that to you. The kids said, geez, Paul, it sounds like you've got you're part of an Avenger organization. I just kind of went, that's pretty impressive because that's about what it sounds like you all have assembled. And so question for all of you, which Avenger is each of your units? So
Yeah, we got a ton of them everywhere.
yes, we do.
Again, like I said, Lisa does a great job up there. I think her husband works up I know he works up in the lab also. And he's a bomb tech or whatever. He can have that, okay. But no, they do a great job up there. And as she explained to you, we have a lot of accreditations nationwide and recognized for what we do upstairs in the lab, so.
Ms. Campbell, again, please pass the board's appreciation on to all of your unit. It's remarkable what they do. And we did appreciate, at least I did, your comment about some of the results that you deliver. We've done 16,000 of these or 1,100 of these. And so thank you. That puts some perspective around all the work you do. So thank everyone for us.
Here's my report, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions for the chief or anyone else that's been up? Thanks, sir. All right, we need an approval of our minutes from our October 12th meeting. May we have a motion to approve the October 12th minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Any further conversation on those minutes? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have our minutes passed. Letters, either incoming or outgoing communications. Diana?
None received.
None, thank you. Old business, Commissioner Schwerin, I think we had a conversation around the Attorney General's guidance update.
We did about 6 months ago. I propose we kick this to next month.
Okay. Next month would be December. Holy cow. New business. We have 14 different contracts to go through. 12 of them are related to the academy, and then 2 are non-academy related. I know it's a long list, but just for sake of conversation, I'm going to suggest we do 12 and 2 from a voting perspective. Let's vote on all those that are CMPA and then do the 2 that are non-CMPA. Rich, is that all right?
Sure.
All right, long list, so we will, I will talk as slow as I can to make sure I get it correct when we do that. The first of the 12 for the CMPA is a professional service agreement with the Easter Seals Midwest. It is for a new contract with Easter Seals Midwest to provide the CMPA with an instructor to teach a program entitled Autism Awareness Police Recruit Training for up to 2 sessions between January 1 and December 31, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $700. The second is a professional service agreement with IXII. I'm not sure whether that is said differently, but Group Inc. It is for a new contract with that group for an instructor to teach a program entitled Communication Training Officer on January 16th, 2023 to January 28th, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $6,000. Third is a professional service agreement for Professional Law Enforcement Training LLC for a new contract with an instructor to teach a program entitled Cryptocurrency Investigation on February 2, 2023 to February 3, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $5,000. Fourth is a professional service agreement for public grants and training initiatives for an instructor to teach a program entitled Crime 123, Interviewing and Interrogation on February 20, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $3,000. The fifth, also with public grants and training initiative, is for it's a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Courtroom Testimony on February 21, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $3,000. The sixth is a professional service agreement with 6 Layer Concepts and Consulting LLC. It is also a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Human Terrain Mapping and Behavior Pattern Recognition Workshop from February 21st, 2023 to February 22nd, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $9,887.50. The seventh is a agreement with 6 Layer Concepts Consulting LLC for an instructor to teach it is a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Human Terrain Mapping and Behavior Pattern Recognition Workshop from February 23rd, 2023 to February 24th, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $6,125. The eighth is a professional service agreement with Paul Meller. It is a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled You Have the Right to Remember on February 23rd, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $3,000. The ninth is a professional service agreement with Patrick Hareen, a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Instructor Development from February 27th, 2023 to March 3rd, 2023 to cost not to exceed $1,700. The 10th is a professional service agreement with Mosier Training Solutions. It is a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Field Training Officer for up to 3 sessions between January 1 and December 31, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $28,020. And the 12th is a professional service agreement with NICP Inc. It is a new contract to provide the CMPA with an instructor to teach a program entitled CPTED Cannabis Operations from March 13th to March 14th, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $10,500. And the 12th, the last is a professional service agreement with the City of Brentwood. It is an amended contract with the City of Brentwood for an officer to provide services to the academy. The amended amount for the increase in salary for the 2023 fiscal year, the increases are not to exceed for the salary and benefits of $103,180.86. Did I get those right before we asked to vote on? I didn't
Yes.
tongue tie too
Yeah,
much.
you read them
Well.
beautifully.
All right, may we have a motion to approve the 12 CMPA contracts?
I'd move we approve those 12 contracts.
I
Thank you.
second that.
Any further conversation on those 12 CMPA contracts?
None from me.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have 12 contracts for the CMPA. Thank you very much. The last two are two separate agreements. They are not from the CMPA, and they are separate and distinct from each other. The first is a professional service agreement for the Maryland Heights Police Department. It is to approve a contract between the St. Louis County Police Department and the Maryland Heights Police Department. The contract is for the 2023 State Cyber Crime Grant, which is administered by the Missouri Department of Public Safety. The grant funds the Cyber Crime Task Force, which employs one detective from the Maryland Heights Police Department. The contract is for $86,661, which will cover the partial salary and benefits of the detective for the grant period, which ran from June 1, 2022 through May 31, 2023. The second is an intergovernmental agreement with the ATF. It is an agreement between the St. Louis County Police Department, the U.S. Department of Justice, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. This agreement establishes the terms and conditions for participation in the ATF's Explosives Accelerant Detection Canine Program. This agreement is effective upon the date that the last party signs and shall run for a term of 5 years. This agreement may be terminated upon 60 days written notice to the other party. The responsibilities of the parties shall run from the effective date of the agreement through the working life of all canines provided to the agency unless the agreement is terminated at an earlier date.
Again, you did a very nice job.
Yeah, I would move that we
Work.
accept both agreements.
Thank you, sir.
I
Second.
second that motion.
Any further conversation on those two agreements?
None from me.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have the two agreements. So we have 14 contracts, 14 agreements that have been approved by the board. So thank you very much. Diana, anything from the public forum?
Nothing received.
Very good. The Board of Police Commissioners may vote to go into closed sessions for legal advice and review of claims and lawsuits involving the Police Department, Sections 610.0211 RSMO and Sections 114.020.11 SLCRO, and discussion of employee and personnel matters, Sections 610.0213 and 13 RSMO and Sections 114.020.1, let me state that again, and Sections 114.020.1, 3, and 13 CLRO. May we have a motion to move to closed session?
I move that we go to closed session.
May we have a second?
I second that motion.
Any further conversation on closed? Diana, would you do a roll call vote for us, please?
Commissioner Ashworth?
Yes.
Commissioner Banks?
Yes.
Commissioner Schwerin?
Yes.
Thank you. We're in closed session. If we don't see you again, please have a very happy Thanksgiving. Good afternoon. We are back. It is 12:58 and we are reconvening from closed session. We had one vote in our closed session, and that was to return to open session. We had
It was a roll call vote.
yeah, it was roll call. I was trying to figure out what's the depth of detail. We had a roll call vote. It was unanimous. We won't go into who made the motion and who seconded unless we have to. But very good. So it was unanimous. So we are in open session. Anything else?
No, sir.
Anything else, ma'am?
No.
All right, may we have a motion to, our next meeting will need to be determined. We have to check with our other commissioner as to when her availability is. So we will communicate that as soon as we can.
December meeting.
Sorry, what did I say?
You just are next. I'm saying it'll be in December. We're just getting the dates in December.
Thank you. Our December meeting, thank you for clarifying. May we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second that motion.
Any further conversation?
No.
No.
Roll call vote, please, Diane.
Commissioner Ashworth?
Yes.
Commissioner Banks?
Yes.
And Commissioner Schwerin?
Yes.
We are closed. We are adjourned. Thank you.